What is the worst thing you've seen a coworker do and still avoid being fired? Crack Shack, which wasn't exactly creative, but we later found out that the owners were arrested for selling drugs. When you realised $360,000 in aeroplane parts is like one sub-assembly. One particular type of screw on my old jet was about $10,000 for one single screw. He tried to run over a security officer with his car when the security officer told him he couldn't park where he wanted to park. Almost succeeded too. He wasn't fired. Was he at least sat down for a stern talking to? He was not fired. He did have to meet with HR, so I'm assuming he has a note in his file, but no further action was taken. To my knowledge, he never even apologised. Accidentally send the last 3 years of account details back statements from one company to their direct competitor. Haha, I came close to this. Within my first few months out of college, working as a design engineer, copy and pasted what I then realised was a confidential, proprietary design that we created for a competitor of the client. My boss admitted blame, he signed off and certified it without realising I had copied it from a proprietary job, until I told him that was my reference material after the job was issued. We have a big database of industry standard reference material we use, but he also said I could use previous jobs as reference designs. However, I was unaware at the time that some of our corporate designs were proprietary. We agreed that, as the level of experience I was at and the training I was given I wasn't fully expected to know that at that stage. Needless to say, I've not done it again. That is how it's supposed to work. People make mistakes. Different from the casual bastardry that is a lot of these replies. When companies don't do what yours did, employees just get better at hiding and blame-shifting mistakes. Worst coworker ever was the credit mooch. He would constantly horn in on other people's projects, getting his name added to them to make it look like he was doing S when he actually not. If people tried to assign him any work on said project, he would have a personal emergency, or a virus would make him lose all his work, or his schedule is booked with other projects, or the worst, he would pull some sucker in to help him with it, and said sucker would end up doing all in utter frustration. Because he was so good at stealing credit, he managed to get top marks on his reviews despite doing absolutely zero actual work for the company. I know at least 4 people quit due to this guy getting better raises than they did. Far as I know, they never actually got rid of him. That's middle management material right there. No, that's a straight shooter with upper management written all over him. Had a coworker, as a standard business practice, falsely condemn furnaces in winter to pressure homeowners into buying new systems and pad his commission check. I couldn't do anything as I had no direct proof, but he would joke about it all the time. It did finally catch up with him when one customer smelled BS and called other companies with advanced testing machines. Took those results and sued the poop out of him. I ended up working for that second company and haven't looked back. Sued the poop out of him. Superb! I would rather have the money, but that's just me. This dude walks a server out of the server room every 6 months or so to sell on eBay. We have literally no security except the front door, but the owner is so ancient and out of touch, I doubt she even remembers things are being stolen. We had an IT guy that was stealing old laptops after we replaced them for employees with new ones. Funny thing was that we didn't give him a raise for 5 years since we knew about it, and apparently he didn't want to quit either out of fear of being discovered, or due to the extra money he was making. His raise would have been worth more than the laptop, so we just let it continue. No problem with the lack of character issues for IT position. Seems like a big security risk. As an assistant manager at a Valvoline instant oil change, I was dealing with an unreasonable customer that had just spat at a female employee that he didn't want working on his car. He didn't know that the guy under the car was her boyfriend. The guy comes up the steps, grabs an oil gun and starts pumping 10W30 all climate into the guy's window as he's frantically trying to start the car and roll up the window. The employee was reprimanded pretty hard, but it was understood why he did it. No charges were filed. The franchise owner paid a lot of money to have the guy's car cleaned. I never saw the customer again. If I remember correctly, the employee was suspended for a week. I'm very sorry that I misspoke. I was an assistant to the manager. Former Vioc assistant manager also. This would have been 12 years ago now. Our gun locks never worked properly, so for the most part, we always had to hold the trigger arm down to pump in the oil. No big deal, but probably better anyway. But the locks also prevent accidentally opening the valve when they would get caught on the gun rack, facing the passenger side of the car, with a woman's brand new $4,000 bridal dress sitting uncovered in the front seat. It was a complete accident, and thankfully the manager was there when it happened. I took the topside guy, who was visibly upset, verge of tears, guilty feeling, out the back door, talked him down, told him to take a long on-the-clock lunch. The customer's fiancé came up later that day to apologise for his future bride being rightfully pissed off at us. 2 days later, the corporate maintenance guy for our chain was replacing and testing every single gun on the rack. We had to suspend the guy for not following procedures. Area manager had to do it because the chain managers forced him to, and he quit while on suspension. But it could have been literally anybody in the store that day. We were lucky enough to work for a franchise owner that spent money keeping the stores and equipment in good shape and up to date. I couldn't imagine how shitty that guy felt. Kudos to you for seeing that he needed to get out of there for a while. Most of the managers I worked with only cared about the labour percentage and the ticket average. Nothing. Documenting work as completed when no actual work has been done. Management knew or was suspicious of it, but not so much as a write-up or a reprimand. Eventually, management changed, figured out no work was being done, called it fraud, and canned them. The job was easy too, and good money. I don't get why they didn't just do the work. Similar issue. Had an analyst who joined the team from an acquisition. Deliverables were quarterly. All is fine for about a year. Then I start getting the occasional escalation about overdue work or missing work. I address it and the employee assures me they're working on it. No big deal. We all get behind. But after another full quarter and more frequent issues, I decide to look into all her customers. Turns out the analyst wasn't doing crap until the customer asked for it. They played dumb that they didn't know they had to do it, despite me training them and they having no issues for the first year. HR required a performance improvement period. The employee busted ass and got all their backlog done in the 60-day period and was not fired. Fast forward to another 6 months and it all starts over. They quit before I could get authorization to terminate. Sounds like a stepping stone job that served its purpose. It was an entry level at an IT financial services company. Starting was 60k, so not insane, but nothing to sneeze at. And the work was not hard. The thing that made it suck so bad was 1, this person never had the bandwidth to step up for any one-off problems, despite not doing the work. But then 2, performed an entire quarter of backlog in 60 days. More than capable, just lazy. HR rep found out about a person's elective surgery and made fun of her with a former employee. Let me recap. This person knew about an employee's private medical information because she worked with our healthcare plan and in her role as HR, and shared that private information with another person for the sole purpose of mocking the employee. She was not fired. That's not just worthy of being fired, that's 100% illegal. Edit. Please look for yourself. It's not illegal in jurisdictions. It's not criminal, but very likely could be civilly actionable. Definitely it's the company at a huge risk. The exact kind of risk HR is supposed to prevent. There is no private cause of action under HIPAA. It is 100% impossible for a person to sue for a HIPAA violation. One of my former co-workers, she's since been fired for stealing customers' lottery winnings, told an elderly woman that she was stupid for not knowing how to pump gas. This woman's husband had recently passed away, and he had always pumped the gas for her, so she never learned. I had a horrible second-hand embarrassment when the woman came in and told us. We relayed it to the manager. This makes me so angry that such a sweet thing the late husband did for her got turned into an insult. Lesson for the not yet dead. Teach your family to do basic things so they are able to safely put fuel in a vehicle, replace a filter for the HVAC system, turn off water for the home, reset a tripped electrical breaker, etc. I worked in a medical marijuana state. One guy neglected to check a dry room for a few days, assuming all was well. All was not well, at all. The dehumidifier crapped out while the plants were being hung out to dry, and sat in a warm, dark room for 3 days before it was someone else's responsibility to check it. By that point, every single plant was coated in mold, and we had to throw out a little over $1 million worth of product. Side note, I had never done the math to see what he cost us until now, and I'm mad all over again. His only punishment was to be denied moving to day shift, but other than that, it was forgotten about. That one guy was able to make that mistake and cost you over $1 million seems more like a management problem to me. Oh yeah, that's an issue too. This guy is a lead, though, so he should be a little more responsible than that. Drive around the yard on a forklift, no hands on the steering wheel, firing a nail gun at people and objects around the yard. We had an operator raise a guy 10 feet standing on the forks in order to pull down an overhead door that had been stuck. The scissor lift was literally 30 feet away. The nail gun adds a certain fun factor though. Nailed it! A co-worker jumped out from behind a door at my husband, who is a disabled combat veteran with PTSD, dressed as if he was from the Middle East. He was literally trying to trigger a flashback. No repercussions as he was the boss's friends. 2 weeks later, he fell down some icy steps and broke both legs. Karma took care of that one. Fell. I will say, my husband wasn't the only one who disliked him. Gravity seems to just have ways of finding people like that. One of life's greatest mysteries. I work in an agency that coordinates services for individuals with disabilities. We have one worker has about 12 people on her case that gets all of her attention, and about 20 who are basically ignored. It's clear she isn't trying. One of the people on her caseload was my former client. I told her the correct contact info, the stuff in the online system was wrong. If she checked the yearly plan or looked in the physical file, she could get it. The next evaluation, 3 months later, she said she had called the number on the online system and nobody answered. I asked about the other ways of contact, and she said she wasn't going to check any of the other places. I sent her the info and she got on contact the next day. She constantly says we should drop people from the services because they can't be contacted, and then when somebody else tries, they get somebody the first time. Removing somebody from services and getting them back in can be a multi-month process, and if they were getting services, they would lose them and maybe not be able to get them back. During evaluations, she screams pretty non-stop when anything bad is pointed out. Thank you for not being her. You are welcomed. There is unfortunately a lot of people who don't care, or worse. After I got promoted out of the role working directly with clients, my case mostly was split between 2 people. Both were out in a few months. One person ignored somebody who was having a major crisis when they were trying to get away from abusive house members who were trying to stop that. As far as I can tell, she never made an attempt to get involved, despite me actively working it and telling her she needed to get involved. The other person committed fraud in at least 2 ways. She said she lined a job for a client cleaning office buildings. Instead, he shoveled snow for 12 hours for the worker's husband and never got paid. She was fired for this, but in the course of looking over her work, she billed 10 hours to do a job that would be a stretch at 20 minutes.